Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I am your host, Rob, and joining me today, Dave Scott. How you doing?
Doing well, Rob. How are y'all?
I'm doing good, man.
Good.
And
Nice to be back.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Been a while since we've done a whiskey one on Food, Wine, and Whiskey, so here we go. And leading this educational programming that we're doing today is Glenn is back. How you doing, Glenn?
Doing fine, man.
This is right up your alley, the topic for today's conversation.
Dabble in scotch a little bit.
Dabble, that's it?
Yeah.
People are going to hear you talk and go, he more than dabbles.
Yeah, mostly I'm into bourbon. But
Mostly you're into bourbon?
Yeah, but it is, it's just something else to, enjoy.
Go explore a little bit?
Yeah, it's always fun.
So the topic today is going to be kind of, getting into scotch. So for the listeners who are, most of us are all about bourbon here in the States. I know around the world, scotch is huge, bigger than bourbon, I'm sure. Although bourbon's making a pretty good charge around the globe, but I still think scotch probably has it. But 3 or 4 years ago, getting into bourbon, I just immediately liked bourbon. And with that happening, some friends would be, well, if you like bourbon, try this and try a scotch. And I was like, yeah, no. Don't like it at all. Now, fast forward 3 or 4 years later, obviously my palate has changed drinking all the bourbon that I have, and periodically getting together with friends and having shares and things. Somebody always brings a scotch or two and say, try it. And over those 3 or 4 years, I finally determined that I'm starting to kind of like scotch, and I kind of want to jump into it a little bit more and explore that a little bit more. So here we are. So that's kind of my background on scotch. You go, Dave. What's your...
Yeah, I would say similar, because coming from a wine background for many, many years, some friends and clients that I call on said, you should give scotch a try, because a lot of the same different flavor profiles that you can pick out, like wine. So I went and bought a bottle of scotch and sat in my freezer for some unknown reason. I don't know why, but that was a suggestion by a doctor that I call on. But anyway, it definitely did not appeal to me
at that time. This was how many years ago?
This was 3 years ago, and it was a Macallan 12 sherry finish.
Okay,
it just
now over those 3 years
appeal to me. So
have you kind of opened up a little bit to it, or are you still kind of struggling to kind of go, I want to get into this a little bit?
I'm there. I'm struggling to.
So we're going to see.
So I've had a few, and it's like you. It's like, this isn't as...
Not too bad.
Yeah, not as bad as I remember. So.
And I find it's more the non-peated that I kind of...
Definitely.
Was more like, okay, I kind of like this than the peated. Although, again, here recently I've had a couple more peated ones, and I went, well, that's kind of interesting. So, to be honest, I don't know what's going on with my palate.
But I think you're right. I think over the 3 years of getting into bourbon far more, that my palate has changed, and scotch isn't as off-putting to me as it was when I first tried to get into it right after wine.
Used to be my just nosing it, I didn't even like it. And now it's like a totally different nose. Right. Even the peated ones, I like the nose on all of them. I won't say I like the palate on all of them yet, but most of them I go, okay, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Glenn, your background, I mean, you already acknowledged you're a bigger bourbon guy, but you definitely are into scotch.
Yeah, I was probably actually more into scotch earlier than I was bourbon. But just real, your sort of real budget stuff. And then I progressed more into bourbon. But in the past, I'd say 4 or 5 years, I've started getting more into scotch, and I like exploring the different regions, different cask finishes, and every distillery, if they're all real close, there's such a wide range of flavors you can get out of scotch. I think much wider than bourbon.
So to that point, there's everybody here and people listening who are into bourbon know, or if you don't know, there's a big group here in Houston called the Houston Bourbon Society. And one of the guys who admins in that group, Christopher Hart, pretty well known in the bourbon community. But I saw him doing one of his shows, I think it was, where somebody pushed the question back to him, if you had to pull the trigger that you had to get rid of one of the bourbon or scotch, you had to get rid of one. You could only drink the other one from now on. He clearly said scotch is my thing. You know, that scotch is, to your point, Glenn, has a huge range of flavor profiles that you can get into that is just so much more fun to explore and enjoy. He said then bourbon's kind of not necessarily a single note, but, you know, it's a 4-lane highway all going the same direction. They might be a little different speed in each lane, but they're all kind of in that same profile.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Okay. Well, you are going to lead us on this because I'm speaking for you, Dave. We don't know a whole lot about Scotch. And so I think jumping in, I'm going to let you lead it, but I think maybe we'll start off with kind of the regions because there's 5.
Well, before we jump into that.
There we go.
Let's talk about what sort of Scotch is and the monikers that come along with it. So, you know, you have blended Scotch, you have blended malt, you have single malt, and you also have single grain. That's not very common, but it does exist. So the single part or the blended means, so single means it's only coming from one distillery. So it can be anything they make, but it has to be from that one distillery.
So it can be a barley or a malted barley blended together, but it's still called the single.
So let's not think about the barley part of this.
Okay.
Let's start with just the distillery, right? So blended, you can source from multiple distilleries, right, to create a blend.
Okay.
Right. So a single means it's just from one distillery.
Okay. I'm going to wine where I go a single varietal is going to be all Cabernet or all, you know, Petit Verdot or whatever it is. So I'm when you say single, it throws me off that it can be from one distillery, but it can still be multiple grains.
Right.
Okay. See, I did, honestly, initially I thought single meant it's a 1 grain whiskey, and it's not necessarily.
It's not the case. So let's get to the second part of that. So we have grain and malt. So malt is basically this malted barley, right? And so grain, let's get back to the malt. It's typically in pot stills. So you get a completely different flavor out of pot stills than you do column stills.
Okay.
Right? So a lot of time grain is with column stills, but they don't have to use barley. So it can be other grains.
Okay. This can get a little confusing, I can tell.
It can be very confusing.
So is there a way to simplify it and say, how would you describe the difference of what you're going to get from something made in a column still versus a pot still? Because in the world of pot still stuff, you know, when you hear somebody talk about something, they go, it's made in pot still. You know, that means something to more people. Yeah, it seems like that's a better, or it's at least favored by more people.
It's from a pot still, you'll get, I think, typically more mellow flavors out of it. It's not as harsh, but you know that can change with age and everything else. Column stills. So Aeneas coffee, if you know Nika coffee malt. So that guy.
It's a Japanese whiskey for those.
Well, yeah, but this guy was, I believe he was Scottish, but he tried to introduce the column still to the distilleries in Scotland, and it's way more efficient, and you can just output way more distillate, but the Scotch didn't want anything to do with that.
Really?
Yeah, and so that's why a lot of Irish. So it went to the Irish, and they adopted that, and so they typically do column stills. Pot stills, they're usually taller, and your the vapors when you're distilling it, it has more time to react with the copper, and that
got that long neck going up.
Yeah, right. And so that the copper compounds it. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but it does change the distillate to more mellower and more favorable distillate.
I do want to throw out one thing real quick that I learned from you when we were having some whiskeys talking about Irish whiskey. I think a lot of people in the, Scotch, bourbon, Irish whiskey world thinks that Scotch is the older of the three, that's been around the longer, that's kind of led the way, and everybody else kind of jumped on, which it's not the case.
Right.
Finding out from you on an Irish episode that we did, it was actually the Irish who had been doing whiskey a lot longer than Scotch.
Yeah, 300-400 years longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Had no idea.
I didn't either.
I would have thought Scotch was the leading.
And I think that's the perception of everybody, just because I don't know if it's marketing or just quality of what they've put out has just, over whatever number of years, I haven't been into it, but it's just taken off. I mean, to show my age, I can remember watching MASH back in the day. And for those of you who are really young, it was a kind of semi-serious comedy that was on in the 80s. But anyway, about the Korean War, and there was a guy on there, you know who I'm talking about?
Hawkeye.
Well, I was talking about Winchester. Who
Charles
always had to have his 12-year-old Scotch sent to him from, and that's when I remember hearing, man, this, whatever this is, being younger, a 12-year-old Scotch must be really good, and Scotch has always been something that I've thought was what the high standard was. If you can get to where you can drink Scotch and 12-year-old Scotch, you're doing pretty good. Now I've come to find out, 12-year-old, big deal. Get a 21, get a 28-year-old, whatever. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. We talked about the distilleries and the single blended. And we can get into the regions.
And there's 5.
There's 5 main,
but sub-regions, is that what we would call them?
It's blurred. There's no okay, I'm crossing the state line, I'm in whatever. Some highlands can technically be Spaysides. It's just however they want to market themselves.
So
really.
It was interesting because before we started recording, you and I, Dave, were talking to Glenn, and we thought, based on the region you were in, there was some kind of style that you adhered to make your whiskey a certain way.
Right.
Kind of like if you're in
all
Burgundy.
Spaysides are peated, but that's evidently not the case.
Yeah, so we got a quick education there that they can all do peated, non-peated, light peated, whatever, in all the different regions.
Right. Yeah, so I think with Scotch, and one reason why I think it has such a vast range of flavors is the terroir is more pronounced in Scotches. So they, a lot of times right around the distillery, that's where they get sourcing the grains.
And I know we're going to just real quick tell everybody when you say terroir, they're going, what the hell is he talking about? Some people know what that is if they're into wine or whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, so any whiskey is an agricultural product, basically. It's food. So, food from one place is going to taste different from food from another, just because of, sun, the ground, like what minerals are in the ground, the water, same thing. Minerals in the water.
Grain you're growing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With Scotch, there's, like I said, there's just way more terroir, I think, in it.
Differences.
Yes.
So, and I keep going back to wine, but for me, that's the easier way to kind of understand this because
some come from gravelly soils, some come from sandy soils,
granite,
hillside.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's some places where you can, take a rock and throw it 50 yards, and it's completely different there than it is when you're growing over here. And Scotch sounds like it's similar.
It's very similar. And we'll taste that when we get into, say, some of the islands or the islas, where you can taste salty, like it tastes briny.
So since we're jumping into the areas, the different regions of Scotch, why have those? What's to identify, the Highlands from the islands, and then the, how do you say the Isla, and then you have the lowlands, the highlands. What differentiates them from each other? There's got to be something that they want to do, even from a marketing standpoint, that says ours is different in some way, or no? Is it more that they're just known for, even though they can produce peated or non-peated, certain regions are known for producing more of either non-peated or peated?
Yeah, I think it's more for the customer, I think, and also probably some marketing in that. But it's just to let you know, hey, you can sort of expect this from, what's in that
this
bottle.
region.
Right. But like you guys, y'all thought, okay, this region is peated.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a common misconception. And so
Okay.
we'll get into some of that, and sort of flavors what we can get out of, different regions.
So let's touch on the regions again. There's 5 main ones, and we'll call them sub-regions within those that some people might
Yeah.
go, well, there's this, we call those sub-regions, but the 5 main ones are?
So we got Isla,
Mm-hmm.
we have Islands, Highland, Lowland, and Speyside.
Okay. So
And then there's a couple others that sort of you can.
some people might call a region, some
Yeah,
don't.
well, Campbelltown is an island, but it's its own.
Is it within
kinda
one
thing.
of these?
It's sort of, yeah. It's part of islands,
Okay.
right? But it has a completely different profile than the other islands.
Okay. So talking again about the different regions, do they have, the different regions have, is there nothing that makes them unique as far as their process and making what they put in the bottle? So I'm thinking, does one region do all finished whiskeys, finished in a sherry or a Oloroso or something like that, and some just do in old bourbons and barrels?
Right.
And
No, the process is basically
much the same.
identical.
wow, okay.
They're all generally used barrels, whether it be bourbon barrels, sherry, port. There's other wines. So
Just like a bourbon distiller that says, hey, I'm going to make this as a bourbon, then I'm going to make a version of it that's finished in a Cabernet or whatever.
exactly.
Okay.
So
That's
it then
it.
becomes a finished whiskey.
Because I've heard so many people, I don't know anything about Scotch.
Yeah,
I'm here to
same.
learn. But as I've heard people talk about these different regions, I always hear them say, oh, man, I love this region. This is where, if you're going to start here. Don't start here. And I'm going, well, then there has to be some
Some differentiating
difference.
factor
Yeah,
in there.
there is, and so in just getting into Scotch is a minefield. One wrong step and you're
And you're back to
and
bourbon.
that's basically what
you're back to bourbon.
what y'all's experience has been.
Right.
Yeah.
You pick the wrong one.
Yep.
You're like, I'm done with Scotch.
Yep.
But it's
Because all Scotch tastes like that.
right.
Okay. So before we get into some of the other, deeper dive into this, I have one question that's always kind of been on my mind. And it's kind of a curveball. So if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But when you look at Scotches, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't even know them. You guys do, I'm sure. There's 50 Glen somethings.
Yeah.
What's the Glen connection? Do you know that answer?
Glen is basically, I think it's a meadow.
Yes.
Okay.
Field or meadow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And so-
if you're in that kind of area, they just call it Glen.
It's
Because that's the one thing that's always thrown me off, that there's I don't know what the number is, but I'm going to say 50. I know that's probably high. But there's so many, name a few, Glenfiddich, Glen.
Yeah, so I want to say Glenlivet. This has been quite a while, but they started suing people that had Glen in their name.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and so they made a couple other distilleries change their names.
Really?
Yeah,
New ones that were popping up.
yeah, and so I think some of the newer ones, they were trying to associate themselves with.
To piggyback off of what they had built.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, I've always wondered about that because even when you go into the liquor store and you just kind of look at the Scotch aisle,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
there's a
Glen.
lot of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them, and I just thought there has to be something.
All right. So here is the official word. So when it comes to whiskey, the word Glen, meaning narrow valley in Gaelic. So it's narrow valley. So
I'm guessing there's a ton of narrow valleys in Scotland, and they're all
Apparently.
kind of in there. And
evidently that's
they're
that's
all,
the case. So-
Okay. All right. Well, good enough answer for me.
So your Fiddick from this Glen, your Morangi from that Glen.
So this conversation, this podcast for the listeners and for me and Dave is if we want to start getting into Scotch and kind of exploring that world with a little bit of knowledge so we kind of know we don't step on a minefield or on a mine, in the minefield, you're going to kind of help guide us into what you think some of these Scotches should be that we should start to ease our way in so we don't just get, uppercut it with
Step on the
something that,
mine.
yeah, and
yeah.
just be like, I'm done.
I do have some mines back there, but I think they'll be fun to try.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm curious to try them to see how different they are. So let's start. Do we want to do it by region?
Yeah, so we're going to sort of do by region. But one thing before we hop into that, so there's single malt snobs out there that I only drink single malts.
Okay.
Right? I won't touch a blended anything.
Really?
Right? Yeah, just the same with, I guess there's some people in bourbon that are like, single barrels. That's all I want. So the first one we're going to try is Naked Grouse. And so this is a blended malt. So it's blended, so it's from multiple distilleries, but it's only single malts.
Okay. And how common is single malt? Because when you compare it to a single barrel, I know.
So most scotches that are, most prominent scotches are single malts.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
So Glenfiddich, which is what we're going to try next after Naked Grouse. So Naked Grouse is blended malt from Macallan and Highland Park.
So what my first question is on this one. The people listening can't see it, but me and Dave saw it, and immediately we thought,
yeah,
looks like a bourbon.
It's dark.
It's very dark.
It's very amber, I would say. Yeah. So this is
compared to a Scotch. It's
a lot of Scotches they're so light colored, especially ones that aren't. So with Scotch, it's acceptable, but it's legal for them to add a certain amount of color.
So that's what this is.
That's not it though.
That's not it. Okay.
So this is
not this time.
This is first fill sherry casks.
Okay. So explain.
So this, so the blender got fresh barrels from a sherry
so
producer.
they've just been emptied.
So they just dumped them, and then they put these two from Macallan and Highland Park in those barrels
right away.
Right away. So
there's some remnants of the flavor dripping down the sides and stuff, and it's
so all of that's marrying together, and that's what gives this the color and the flavors out of this.
Well, it smells great. Dave, you're kind of making a face. What do you think?
I don't know. The jury is still out.
But you're still open to this. I'm hoping at the end of this you're going, okay, I'm kind of getting into this.
But this has what I would say a Scotch smell to me. What I associate Scotch smelling like and disliking.
Oh, really?
Is it the fruity flavors
I'm trying to figure out what.
So this has a little Highland Park in it, so there is a slight sulfur note.
And when you just said sulfur, right when you said that,
triggered it.
Yeah, there is a bit of sulfur smell to it. I get a hint of fruit there, but then the more that I take in, the sulfur smell seems to overwhelm it. And
see, I'm getting more fruit on this as I nose it.
I think it's a very fruity Scotch.
Yeah. That's what just jumps out at me is just the sweetness of it. Okay, on the palate?
On the palate, it's fine. I mean,
so there's a little, it's like prickly a little bit, and I think that's that sulfur sort of note.
But I'm getting a little more toasted.
Yes, but I also get the fruit on the palate.
Yeah.
I like that sweetness of it.
Yeah.
This isn't peated at all, is it?
No. There's very slight from Highland Park. Like
not
very,
much.
very slight.
Yeah. On the nose, I kind of smell like I thought it was going to be a little bit peated. It smelled a little bit of that.
And I think that's what I associate with that sulfur smell is that, okay.
But on the palate, I don't get it like I thought I might.
No.
I could drink that all day.
Yeah. Is
this available on the shelf all the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's cheap.
I've never heard of this. Okay, tell them.
$25, $27.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Age stated?
No.
Okay, so what do you think this is? 3, 4 years? No, it's got to be
it's older than that.
Thinking of bourbon.
Yeah.
It's probably 8, 10.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences for bourbon drinkers to Scotch drinkers. I just kind of shot off when you say it's young. I'm thinking, 3, 4, 5 years old
Right.
is a young bourbon. But in the Scotch world, young is 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Is the lowest you're going to see?
Well, no, there's some 3 year, like to be technically Scotch, it can be 3 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But generally you won't see those.
All right. So in talking about the age statement or how long they are being aged, since we're more into bourbon, if you get into anything over 4 years is starting to get some decent age on it, but up to 8, 10 is probably the sweet spot, and it seems like that's really the minimum for what I would say a good Scotch. Yep. But I had a friend that went on a tour to Glendronach and was talking with the distiller there, and that they started talking about the differences between Scotch and whiskey and the aging, and because of the climate in Scotland, and I mean it's much cooler and I guess drier. I don't know.
Yep.
Takes much longer time period to get the flavor out of the barrels that you want to impart in your whiskey. So, and he said, and the distiller there said, man, I wish that we had climate so we could, just because of the length of time once you barrel it. Yeah. I mean, one distiller may never see his finished product come to market just because
it's crazy
the amount of time that it needs to spend in a barrel. Whereas with bourbon, I mean,
especially bourbon in Texas where we're at.
Right. So,
well, the other thing about, I think, getting some of that with bourbon, I think bourbon people know this, those who aren't into bourbon may not, but all bourbon has to go into, if it's going to be a bourbon, it has to go into New American Oak.
New American Oak.
That's charred.
Right.
So you're going to get that infusion of that barrel characteristics. That's usually that, vanilla and brown sugar and all that kind of flavor, right, but the color as well. All of Scotch goes into used barrels. They don't use anything new, or do they use some new?
They do. Some distilleries do use new oak.
Do they char it, or is it not?
Yeah, it's charred.
A light char, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's not like our, wild turkey where it's a char number 4.
Yeah,
right.
Alligator char.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering about that, but for those people who, know about barrels and charring, and that's one of the big differences is that, getting that flavor out of that barrel is it's already kind of been extracted.
Right.
And to your point, when you talk about the temperature and the weather in Scotland, if you don't have that heat, we always think about, I'm going to touch on the proof. Bourbon can get up, because we have these summers in the States in most places that still get up to the 90s, and I don't think Scotland gets up that high.
No.
And so, when you have whiskey in a barrel, the water is going to evaporate, which means you leave the whiskey in the barrel and the proof goes up.
Yep.
I think one of the reasons that, you can tell me, Glenn, but most Scotches are somewhere between 80 and maybe 100. They don't much get over 100. Cask strength maybe a little, but not much.
Cask strengths, they can get up to about 120.
They can get up that high?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they can.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But I would guess that with Scotches, now maybe I'm wrong because they're aging so long, if you're getting an 18-year or 21-year, because of the much more temperate climate, I wonder if they have as much angel share lost out of barrels as...
They do have a good amount of angels, but I think the drier climate is part of that.
Is key.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that they're yielding a lot more bottles out of a barrel than bourbon is. But I also thought the flavor is going to be better, even if it's not as high proofed, because they don't have to dilute it down, add water to get it down to a proof that they want to sell it at.
Right.
Something that comes to mind to me when I think about that, if you take an 18-year Scotch, Glenn, what's it typically proofed at? I mean, are they...
Yeah, most of them are down around
86.
86.
Yep.
But the flavor's still fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's what I've heard, is that even at that proof, flavors are fantastic. Something that comes to my mind in the bourbon world that I'm always disappointed with is Elijah Craig 18.
Right. Yep.
Because it's an 18-year-old bourbon.
Right.
And then they proof it down to 90. And I feel like I can kind of sense that there's these great flavors that used to be in here until it got proofed down to 90.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I understand why they do it. They got to get that yield up, and the market kind of, and people still buy it and chase it because it's 18-year Elijah Craig. But
There are so one cool thing with Scotch is you can get people that just buy barrels, like they're blenders, right? So they just buy barrels from a distillery.
Barrels.
No, like they'll buy a product from a distillery, and they'll
distill it.
Yeah, and they'll release it as at cast strength.
really,
Yeah, they'll non-chill filter it and release it at cast strength. I have one, Duncan Taylor over here from Brooklotic.
So when people hear you say non-chill filter, tell them what that is.
So the chill filtration pulls some of the oils and the congeners out of the whiskey. It's really meant for if you're going to put your whiskey on rocks or add a little bit of water, it'll turn cloudy. If it's proofed around 83, I think 86 is where it doesn't matter. But if it's at 83 or 80, that's when they need to chill filter it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did know that, and I think that it's more for visual aesthetic.
It's just an appearance thing.
That's the big reason.
Yeah, because like Glenn said, if you pour it over rocks and it suddenly gets cloudy, you're like, something's wrong with that.
Now, one of the barrels, or I don't know how many distilleries in Scotland, but I think there's quite a few of them that use one of America's biggest bourbon makers.
Most distilleries use Heaven Hill and Jack Daniels.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That I knew that Jack Daniels is one of the biggest bourbon producers out there, and I knew that their barrels were used a lot with Scotch.
Yep.
You guys see what I did there?
No.
They're one of the biggest bourbon producers.
Yep.
Yeah. That's not
Lighting
bourbon.
a
That's
fire.
whiskey.
I'm lighting a fire.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, I just finished off that little sample of the Naked Grouse, and that definitely grew on me.
I agree.
But it's got some flavor profile in there that I would definitely associate with bourbon, like a kind of a toasted marshmallow.
See, I got the toasted and then the fruit. That was the two big things that stood out to me. I will tell you that what kind of goes through my mind as I'm drinking this and sipping that first warm-up one we had, Glenn, as I'm a bourbon guy, but for some reason drinking these, I kind of feel like a guy who likes to smoke a cigar once in a while. A cigar may go better with Scotch than it does with bourbon. Is that
I think so. Maybe not better, but I think it can accentuate different things in a cigar.
It goes just as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what are we going to jump to next?
All right, so we got Glenfiddich 12.
And this is, again, an entry-level Scotch that, well, let's start with the Naked Grouse you said was about $25-$30.
Yeah.
Should be nationwide. It's not distributed just in certain states.
It's pretty
Who's
widely
the distiller of that?
So that's the thing is it's a
It's
blend,
a blend.
right? So it's a company that's buying barrels from
Okay, so they don't even make
distilleries.
their own juice.
they just source.
They just buy the barrels, and then they have a master blender that we kind of know
Correct.
of now, and they put it together. And is it consistent, or every
Yeah,
year do you get something different?
Every time I've had it, it's
pretty consistent.
Yeah.
But always from the same producers.
Yes,
Which were
I believe Highland Park and Macallan.
okay.
Okay, is that common in Scotch?
Yes, it's very common.
That when you hear blended, you know it's probably somebody that doesn't. When I heard blended, I just thought this guy made his own stuff, but he also said, well, I'm going to buy something from my buddy Jimmy over here, and we're going to make something together.
So
To
like
me, what I thought was more in line with the bourbon world of small batch, that you're taking multiple batches and blending it to get the flavor profile you want.
Right, so
instead of
that's
a single barrel.
from one distiller. So that
Okay.
would be
A single.
That would be a single malt.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Right. So that's sort of a
Boy, that is, I mean, because you're thinking one way with bourbon and wine and this, and then you're hearing all this, it's like completely opposite of what
Yeah.
you're used to thinking.
So being able to take a bunch of different products, as long as they're from the same distillery, that's still a single malt.
No, they don't have
that
to
would
be.
that would be a blended malt if it was from multiple distillers.
No, from all the same distillery.
Oh yeah, the same. Yeah. It would,
So you could have
You could have a small batch of a little bit left out of 100 barrels, pour it all in, and it's called a single malt.
yep.
See, that's what blows me away.
Same. That's where I for me, I was associating single malt with more like with single barrel
Or single grain.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so Johnny Walker, let's just say the red or black, that's a blend of probably 40 to 60 different distillers.
Okay.
Wow.
Again, makes me ask the question, does it stay consistent?
Yes, very consistent.
How do they do that?
Those guys are good.
Yeah. I had this conversation the other day. It's like, can you imagine that either your palate is so refined that you can reproduce the same flavor year after year, or is it we as consumers don't really recognize small changes? Let's say Wild Turkey 101. I mean, that's been out forever. You would think you're going to get the same flavor profile, but do we really? Or is it there's some variance there that we just don't pick up?
Yeah.
Or is the blender and the distiller, are they that good? Is their palate that good that they can reproduce that flavor profile year in and year out?
Yeah. And so I think you got to break it down as far as, say, whenever you're sourcing a barrel from one distiller, okay, I want this profile from that distiller. I want this profile from that one. So it's not like they're throwing all this into a blend and like, oh, this is wrong. Like I need more of this one little thing.
Right.
They're very specific from each distiller, and then they know, okay, I have all these components, I can put it in, and it should basically taste the same.
But it's still, those distillers every year have to make it exactly the same. And I'm guessing they have, that's why they're called master distillers.
I guess so.
They're growing the same grains in the same fields and the same, I'm guessing weather might be a little different that could affect the terroir, depending on how cold, does it get warm faster, whatever. But other than that, it should be pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay.
But definitely learned something there with the single blend and the single malt and the blended.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right.
I'm thinking that I'm trying to decide, what's better, and maybe you can tell us, Glenn. Is there a thought that a single malt is better than a blended, or is there a thought that when you get blended stuff, or is it just kind of divided 50-50?
That's sort of the general thought is most people think a single malt is better.
One distillery, their product, their grains, doing
Right.
it their process, it's going to be better.
Some of the best whiskeys I've ever had have been blended malts.
Okay.
Let's say from like Compass Box is one. John Glazier is the master blender there, and he produces amazing stuff.
So are you just kind of, you're making me question this again, because you just said most people think single
That's
malt.
what I'm saying. Most people think that.
But you think.
I think.
So you're not the norm. You're not
No.
a 50-50 cut here.
Yeah.
You're an outlier of what.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be, like Glenn touched on earlier in the discussion, that just like in anything else, wine, bourbon, there are snobs that think that that's the only way to have it is.
Yeah, if it ain't
single
mountain
malt.
fruit, I don't want it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But just think about it. If you can take the best from different distillers and then blend them together, like I think you can create way more flavors and way different.
And I love that idea, because I always kind of, when we do a bourbon kind of infinity bottle, you always go, well, I'm get to do something that, Wild Turkey and Heaven Hill can't mix their stuff.
Right.
But we can go home and kind of play with it a little bit and come up with some stuff that you go is really good. So hearing that different distillers work together and blend their really good stuff together, I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
And really can come up with some really, I would think, fun and fantastic flavor profiles to kind of explore.
Yeah. So I guess something similar would in the bourbon world would be somebody says, okay, I'm going to be a blender, and you go get some juice from Heaven Hill, you get some stuff from distillate from Wild Turkey, get some.
Okay, well, that's a good question.
And then you blend it all and come up with your own product.
Does that happen in the bourbon world? I don't mean to get off on the bourbon world, but I think about Smoke Wagon.
Right.
But I always think they buy only different MGP stuff.
Yep.
But do they buy barrels from different places and then blend it together?
So
Theirs is all that specific example. Smoke Wagon. Theirs is all MGP.
Same with High West.
And they request a certain mash bill only.
Oh, really?
An
age statement?
No, they do their own aging.
They age it in Vegas.
Yeah. Correct.
That's like Texas.
I have two examples. Barrel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they're all over the place, getting Kentucky, Tennessee. But the other one is Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Okay. They get so when we talk about
the
things
the Fusion series, I guess.
Or even the Discovery series.
As I said, the Discoveries are really good. Some of those finished ones are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I guess it's there. I just never really thought
it's not
about
as common.
Right. Just didn't pay attention to that as much.
Okay, where are we going next in Scotland?
Yeah, so Glenfiddich 12. So this is a Speyside.
Okay.
This is probably one of the most selling single malts and one of the highest awarded.
And price point on this?
$42.
Really?
Yeah. So for 12-year, I think this is probably where I would point most people entering into Scotch is probably this.
And that's because, I mean, when you make that statement, do they have to have some history in another spirit? Or even if it's a blank canvas, you still want them to start here?
I think this is just so approachable.
Okay.
It's light. It's nice and fruity, but it's still a little complex. Like it's not so plain that, a more experienced drinker as far as spirits go would just get bored with this.
Right.
What's the proof on this one?
80.
Yeah, I believe it's 80.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Approachable very much from a proof standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away.
Yeah, because this one definitely does not have the sulfur smell.
Yeah.
Like the first one. Like
this has got a lot of
Naked Grouse.
pears and the sort of apple esters.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off there, Rob. What were you going to say? You're blown away by what?
How much flavor they still get out of an 80 proof whiskey, where when I've had 80 proof bourbons, I mean, I just won't. I'd never buy a bottle of 80 proof bourbon, but you have an 80 proof to 86 proof Scotch, and you go, there's some really good flavor in there. And this is definitely tasty.
That's pretty darn good.
Yes, it is.
Get a little cocoa.
So this is one, there's not many distillers, but this is one of the few that direct fire their stills.
So what is it?
You can get a little more sort of things like caramel, kind of like when you're cooking something, direct heat versus if it's like a steam jacket where it's
when you say direct heat, the way I think about it is if you think about somebody who barbecues, for all of us in America who think about somebody who lights up the pit in the backyard, direct heat is a grill. You're going to put the steak right over the flame. Yeah. But a brisket, you might have the firebox offset, and then the heat just kind of drafts over it and cooks it that way. So is this kind of what you're...
It's pretty,
okay.
Pretty similar analogy, yeah.
This is tasty.
It is.
At $42, see, that was one of my things today was to come through and taste a few of Glenn's so I know what I want to go get and what I don't.
Right.
And so far, we're 2 for 2. Who brought this one? Did you?
I did.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Fresh pickup today.
That's good. That's really good. But I will say, this is, okay, I'm sorry, I'm slow, Glenn. This is
So that's a single malt.
It is a single malt.
Yes.
This one was
A blended malt.
Blended malt.
It was single malts from 2 different distillers blended together, and that becomes a blended.
So the Naked Grouse blended malt.
Yes.
The Glenfiddich 12 single malt.
Yeah.
And they taste different.
Completely
Completely different. but both are very good. So I'm starting to kind of see where they talk about, all these different ways to go as far as flavors in Scotch. I kind of.
All I'm seeing right now is dollar signs.
Yeah, my wife and your wife aren't going to they see enough of that with wine and bourbon.
Right.
So one thing with Glenfiddich is they do a Solera cask for marrying.
Oh, really?
I think since the 20s.
Oh, wow.
So you have potentially some molecules of some really old Scotch in there, but
right.
they feel it adds a lot of quality to their products.
So this is a Speyside.
Yeah.
And where do we want to go from here?
So we'll probably, since I think that's the only other space, or that's the only Speyside we have. So we're probably going to hop into Highlands next.
Okay, right. Highlands. And where do you want to start there?
So we'll probably do Glenmorangie, Glenfarclas, and probably Highland Park.
Okay, let's try those because I brought one of those. So
yep.
I'm curious. Right. Finishing a sherry cask.
Let's do it.
Let's pour those, and we'll be right back and see what we think about those. All right, we are back, and we've got. Tell us, Glenn, what we have in the glass again.
All right, so we'll start with Glenmorangie, the sherry cask.
Okay.
And that's a 12-year? Rob, you brought that
it should
one.
be a 12-year. As a matter of fact, I know it's a 12-year.
Okay.
Okay, I think the newer ones, it might be 14 years.
So we had last week, Glenn, in our little break, we were messaging Carter, and here's the two that we had last week.
Okay, 105 cast strength for Glenfarclas. That's a tasty one.
That was very tasty.
Yeah,
so Spring Break that's a Campbelltown.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
So we had that one, Springbank,
So with
12 cast strength, and then the Glenfarclas 105 cast strength, and both were so good.
Yeah, the Campbelltown a lot of times has a lot of iodine and kind of briny flavors. Yeah.
Okay. That's an unusual kind of profile, iodine.
Yeah. Some of the peat can get sort of phenolic.
Okay.
So
what does that mean?
it has phenols. So I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but
sure.
So that part of that smoke gets into the barley, and it makes it through the distillation process and even through aging.
Okay.
That phenols a lot of times can almost like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, that's what I'm
like a new Band-Aid.
okay.
That's sort of phenolic.
I'll tell you what, Dave, the one I brought smells pretty good. I don't know if it's good, but it smells pretty good.
So Glenmorangie has some of the tallest stills in Scotland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then most of their barrels, so they lease their barrels to Jack Daniels in Heaven Hill.
So they give them back?
Yeah, they ship them back.
So why does Jack Daniels want those back?
Because they don't
No,
reuse
Jack
them.
Daniel doesn't want them back. Glenmorangie does. They pay for the barrels, and then they
Jack
send
Daniels doesn't have to pay for the barrel.
Right.
Jack Daniels just gets to age it in there.
They lease it.
So they pay a fee,
Yeah,
but it's less than buying a new barrel.
apparently.
So I mean, new barrels are like $1,200, $1,800.
So Glenmorangie is leasing the barrels from Jack Daniels.
Jack
other
Daniels
way
is
around.
leasing the barrels
Okay.
in Heaven Hill.
because they want them back after they've had the bourbon in them.
Yeah.
You dump them, then they want them back to put the scotch in them.
And they don't ship them back as a full barrel.
No, I wouldn't
They
think so.
break
ship-
them all down into their pieces.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're going to get different staves from different aged bourbons.
Yep.
That then get rebuilt by the cooperage.
Yep.
And they're going to have. Well, that's interesting.
So you might have some Jack Daniels, some Heaven Hill,
I could
like
see-
staves, and so
I could see that being a positive and a negative.
yeah, it's just.
I'm
part of
surprised that they're all that way. They don't ever say make it 50% broke down and make the other 50% leave them whole.
Yep. No.
I guess from a cost for shipping.
Yeah,
it
for
is.
shipping, so they can get
The
so much
density.
more into
Yeah.
a shipping container.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, the Glenmorangie's very nice.
You like that one?
It's a little more smooth.
So, what does smooth mean?
What I would say is it's got more of a well-rounded mouth feel, softer mouth feel.
Yeah, it's a texture thing. It's
Yes,
not
texture.
a flavor.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think smooth is nice on the palate, doesn't beat you up on the palate, but also when you swallow, it doesn't, burn your throat. And, yeah.
But I would say it's more evenly spread out front, mid, and back palate.
Oh, that is good.
And it's got a little more sweetness to it, I guess, because of the sherry.
Yeah. Yep.
Sherry cask finish.
Yeah, I'll go on the record saying I think smooth is an acceptable description of drinking a spirit.
Yeah.
For me.
And, and like you said, it's not the flavor.
Yeah, it's
that's
a texture
smooth, it's
and
a
an
texture.
experience.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with flavor.
Nope.
Yeah, this is nice. Mm-hmm. Who dumped?
I did.
Glenn.
Oh. Should we be? I haven't dumped yet.
Yeah. I'm getting the full experience.
No quitters here?
That's right.
Yeah. All right, I like this one quite a bit, actually. This one, to me, out of the 3 that we've had, this is, in my chest, the best finish so far. Do you know what this is proofed at?
Probably 83.
Is that
I
it?
think on
Or 80.
To me, this has a better finish. I'm getting that nice, I'm getting that Scotland hug. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's
Everybody-
43%.
I think that's fair. So it's 90?
No, 43.
Oh, 43.
Oh,
so it's an
86.
86. All right.
Just leave these on the table so I can look at them.
Man, it's got a nice finish. This is my favorite finish of the 3, this being our third one we've had. But
Yeah.
this has got, for me, a really nice finish on it.
Yeah, so this is the La Santa is what it's called.
What does that mean?
That's just what they call it.
Okay, doesn't mean
That's
nothing.
the name of it, yeah. So it's aged in American oak bourbon and finished in sherry cask.
So, explain to people what that process means.
So
Aged.
the maturation part so they dump it into a barrel, age it in that. So that's in the bourbon barrels. And then they take that and then put it into fresh, I think it said fresh, sherry barrels. So those,
And so the aging is going to be that, 8, 10, 12, 15 year, whatever it is.
Right.
The finishing,
Might
couple
be-
months, 3
um,
to 6 months.
I would say it's more in the more years.
Yeah.
Oh, it is
than
years
months.
still.
For Scotch. It's,
Okay.
it's generally longer, just because what we were
Takes
talking
a
about
while.
earlier. Everything. As you increase temperature, everything speeds up.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
It just takes a
So
little longer.
2 to 3 to 4 years, something like
Probably, yeah.
that. Okay. Does that count towards the age on it?
No,
So once it comes out of,
it does. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
Okay. So if it goes in there for 10 years and then it goes in there
for 2 years, then we have a 12.
a 12-year.
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. So when you see something that's finished, then you understand that it's still aged in a bourbon and then finished in a whatever type of cask, this being a sherry.
Yeah,
I do like the bottle. I mean, not that it matters, but, bottles are cool. Sometimes you like the way they
That's
look.
a cool bottle.
That's a cool bottle, Matt Carter. I do like the way this bottle looks, and I think it's a Scotch. To me, seems to have some really cool labels, more so than I think about bourbon, and they just seem kind of plain now that I'm seeing all these cool kind of Scotch labels. It's like bourbon world needs to step up their game on the labeling.
yeah.
Some of the bottles too.
Glenmorangie, they do a lot of different finishes. They have sauternes, Burgundy, Super Tuscans, port sherry, obviously. But I think they're one of the more experimental.
Really?
And those are all finishes,
Yes.
not the original
Aged.
aging and maturation.
Correct.
Okay.
And you said a Sauternes?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to
I
be a
bet
sweet one.
I would like to give that one
Yeah.
a try.
Have you had one of those?
No, I haven't.
That's got to be really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine the flavors that are coming out of that thing.
Yeah, I would look forward to trying
I think they have I think last year they came out with I think it's Malaga. It's like a dessert wine
Okay.
that's supposed to be pretty good, but it's very sweet.
Wow. All right, I'm going to save a little on this one because what I didn't do, well, we only had 2 last time, but I finished them both instead of really being able to drink them
Back
side
and
by
forth,
side.
yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we can move on
wow.
to
Ooh, wow.
Glen Farkless.
Okay, this one I like a lot, Glenn.
Definitely.
This is one of my favorite. Oh, I was wrong. This is a space side. So we're trying to space side with Highlands. But it says Highland on here on the bottle, but it's a space side. So that's what I was saying earlier. It's blurred. So,
Okay.
They can call themselves a Highland even though they're
Okay.
around other areas that are.
This is on the nose. There's
That is fantastic.
So this is another one that does direct fire pots.
Okay.
And so I think you get more of that sort of, not burnt sugars, but it just adds a different profile that I think really adds character.
On the nose, I'm getting something I'm trying to describe. Again, it gets back to that almost like cotton candy kind of.
Yeah, so the difference, let's say, between these two, between the Glenmorangie and the Glenfarclas.
Mm-hmm.
So the Glenmorangie, all these Glens.
Yeah, I know. Talked about that earlier.
Yep.
Narrow Valley.
So this was aged, the Glenmorangie was matured in bourbon. The Glenfarclas is matured in sherry.
So it's matured. It's actually in there for most of those years, not finished. It's sitting in there all the time.
The whole 12 years is in sherry cask.
Wow, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I like them both. I haven't tasted this one yet, but on the nose, boy, it's my favorite nose so far.
I would agree.
And is this 86 as well?
I believe so. Yeah, 43%.
I can see where Scotch also, you get into that higher proof bourbons. You have 3 or 4 that are, 120 to 135. I mean, that starts to take its toll, but you could have, sit around for the evening and just have a few of these and kind of explore what's in your bar a little bit more, not wake up feeling like crap the next day.
Yeah, Glenfarclas is probably one of my favorite non-peated. I like peat.
Oh, you do?
I do.
What's the price point on this one?
This one is about $45.
Man,
I think it's $43 today at Total Wine.
And it's not allocated, and you can find it on the shelf.
Everywhere. So it's weird. The 10-year.
I may be switching to Scotch.
I wanted to ask you, now that we're kind of getting into these a little bit more, are you, when we first started, people could hear you go, yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm not sure.
But now that I've figured out what that smell and flavor is that I dislike with the sulfur, but the only one that's had it on the nose was the Naked Grouse.
Right. And I think you'll get that in the next pour.
Okay. And does that have to do, I mean, did the Naked Grouse have some level of
It has
peated?
Highland Park in it.
Okay.
So one of the components of it is that right there.
Okay, I'm going to tell you honestly, I really like the nose on, this is Glenfarclas?
Glenfarclas.
Yes.
Glenfarclas. I like that nose the best, but I still like this one on the palate better.
Yeah, this one, it's sweeter.
Yeah.
I think.
Which one's sweeter, the
Glenfarclas? I think it's
because
overall it's sweeter, whereas the Glenmorangie, as I was saying, matured in bourbon cask, so it's
right, and only finished in sherry.
right. So you get maybe it's just more like just a spicing versus,
And it's a better finish to me, for my palate. I mean, you guys may not get the same reaction that I'm getting from it. We're all different, but I like the finish on that. And I don't know if I'm steering towards the finish because that's a big thing in bourbon, is the finish. Is that big in Scotch that you talk about the finish?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm okay to say I really like the finish on this one.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So when we jump to Highland Park, what are we going to? This is sherry, but we're talking about just finished, and that's maturated in it. The Highland Park is going to be, I'm looking at the labels, Dave, and when it's, Viking Honors,
Yeah.
it's got to be, it's got to have some punch to it, yeah.
No, it's a 43, I think.
I'm just saying it just needs to be big flavor. It's a Viking drink.
Yeah.
Yep. So the Highland Park 12, what are we looking at?
Yes, I think this is also mostly sherry casks.
Okay.
So this is going to have some peat on it. We're going to get.
Yeah, it's very slight.
And so people who are listening that are still trying to get into Scotch like us, I kind of have heard what peat is, but peat is it's kind of a process that they use to.
Yeah, so-
back in the old days, they still do it today. It's not necessary as much, but it's just something that they still do.
Right. So there's no trees in Scotland.
Yeah.
Right. So they had to have some fuel. They had to burn something. Right. So they have these
To raise the heat level to stop the malting.
Just
of
in
the
general, they've always burned peat for
For
heating their houses
Okay.
and everything else, right?
And when you hear
And
the
so-
second word of this, then it'll make sense to them.
right? And so part of the not fermentation, the malting process. So you get your grains, you get them wet, so they start germinating to break down these starches into sugars, and you have to raise the temperature to a certain degree to stop the germination process. Otherwise, they're just going to use up all the sugars, and then you have nothing to ferment.
Gotcha.
But peat, if I'm remembering correctly, is a moss.
Right.
Yes,
It looks like a moss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
So
that's
now
basically
that
it. So
kind
they
of people
they cut
understand.
it. They have these big bogs,
Yeah.
right, where just all this vegetation over time has accumulated, and they cut it out and they dry it, and then they can burn it.
Okay.
And so, depending on the area, the peat. So so this one, all right, peat can have like a earthy flavor. It can be ashy. It can be barbecuey. As far
Really?
as like meaty. Yeah, there's all kinds of different flavors from peat. And so in Highland Park, it's kind of a sulfury note, is what we were talking about earlier. And so it's very slight peat.
I was going to say, I'm not getting a lot of it on the nose. And to me, the nose on this one is the most subtle of the three. I mean, I'm fighting to get my nose in there and get some. Am I the only one that way, or are you guys getting a lot on this?
I get sherry, and then I get the peat.
I get the sherry, but it's like subtle.
Yeah,
It's not
it
as
is
pronounced as both
Yeah.
of the other ones.
It's not a sherry bomb like the
Yeah,
Farkless
okay.
is.
That's by design.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that's what they were going for.
Okay. They just want a hint of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going back. Going back to the naked grouse and having the, whether you want to call it underlying sulfur smell or overbearing sulfur smell. That's what I get when I first put my nose in here. I get it on the palate.
I
get some sweetness, but then the sulfur.
I get the same kind of prickly kind of feel on the palate as with the naked grouse.
I get the peat on the palate for sure. I don't get it as much on the nose.
Yep,
But
definitely.
I get it more on the palate.
That right there is,
Not your jam?
if somebody started me there with Scotch, I'd be, nope, I don't like Scotch.
Yeah.
Now, if you gave me the first two, the Glen Farkless and the Glen Morangi, yeah.
See, I don't mind this.
And I don't mind it either, but it
It's
doesn't.
just not my favorite out of the
no,
three here.
No.
And it's with a lot of things, you get accustomed.
Acquired taste,
So-
for sure.
It's the same.
Come
with
back in 2 years and you and I might be like, what the hell were we ever drinking the other two for?
Just, I've got friends that drink nothing but Scotch or very rarely drink anything but Scotch, and they are peat.
Well, Glenn said the same thing.
That's all they want is peat, and once your palate gets used to the peat, then everything else. One of my friends said basically ruins your palate, because once you get to that level of wanting more and more peat,
I think he's being a little close-minded, because you get used to peat. Like I drink a lot of Isla, but I go back to some of these Space Sides and Highlands, and I get completely different flavors after drinking.
But both peated.
Yeah. Well, no, these aren't peat.
ding.
Ding.
But yeah, it does change your palate. But once you can go back and try some of these others, you end up picking up different flavors than you have.
That was going to be a question I was going to ask, because I've heard the same thing from Scotch people that I know, that peated's where it's at, and we heard you say earlier that's your favorite, Glenn.
Yeah.
So
from a styles or from a region, yeah.
But the
kind of
peat in the ones you like, because I haven't had them enough or had them very often, it doesn't take over the profile. It's not a single note that you're really liking in that peated style. It's still a variety there that.
Yeah. And we'll try some.
Okay.
That probably on the same level as the Highland Park as far as the level of peat.
Yeah.
That I think you guys are really going to like.
And we're going to keep going back to bourbon because that's what we know, and that's what that's kind of my bar to kind of compare.
That's my
to.
comparison.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I think about bourbons, there's some I like that I go, but it's a single note. It's good,
right?
But it's a single note. It doesn't have that
it's
complexity.
Singular, right. It's not a complex kind of ride. It's just one. It just hits and then it falls off.
Right. And you're saying the peated, just because you like peated, it's in there, but it's not a single. No, you still have some complexity in there.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because, and I've had a couple bourbon. Well, they're not really bourbons; they're whiskeys that have been so off-putting to me. One time, I tried Balcones Brimstone. Oh. And to me, it tastes like a tire fire.
Oh, really? That bad?
It smelled like burning rubber, like a tire fire. And then the other is High West Campfire.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've got those names for a reason. And
I love peat, and I can't stand both of those.
And it's American whiskey trying to
make a spin on
a peated Scotch.
So they're using like mesquite.
Right.
And that's not what you use.
No. Both of those are mesquite flavored.
Now, there are some Texas distillers, and I think, what's the one that I just picked up over in wine country? It starts with an A.
Andalusia.
Andalusia.
The Striker.
But, yeah, they bring their moss in from Scotland, they say.
Right. They're peat. Supposedly,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what they told me.
That's what they say on the. That's what they say on the tour. But they also Andalusia is one grain. They only use barley.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're single malts.
Right. They are single malts. Yep.
Okay. All right. These three, Glenn. If we're going to run through, me and Dave would say that the Highland is our least favorite. I'm going to guess because of profile, it's your most favorite of these three.
It's up. So I like Glenfarclas and Highland Park.
Okay. Those would be your two favorites.
Yeah, but because of the less sweet nature of the Highland Park, I do tend towards that one.
Yeah. So Glenfarclas was our first one.
Second
one. Okay. So that's right. Glenmorangie was the first one.
And that's my favorite overall. The nose on the Glenfarclas is my favorite nose, but the palate and the finish on the Glenmorangie is my.
I would agree with you,
yeah.
But after tasting back through them, I think this is most bourbon-like.
What is that one?
To me, the Highland Park, the Glenmorangie.
Yeah, because it's aged longer in bourbon casks.
Right. So it has more.
Yeah, that's fair.
It has more of the flavors that I'm used to. I don't know that it's. I mean, if I started drinking more and more Scotch, that would probably change. But right now, where I am, the Glenmorangie,
that's a fair
is
point.
More bourbon-like,
and that may be subconsciously I'm going to that just because my sensories are going. Mm-hmm. This, and I'm not even thinking about that. I'm still thinking Scotch.
Yep.
But
on the nose, the Glenfarclas I think is outstanding.
Absolutely my favorite nose.
Yep. This one's great with the cigar.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That is good. Okay, where are we going next?
So I think we have some islands we're going to get into.
All right.
And what's the difference that we're going to see here? Is it just...
So you're going to have the sort of maritime... So these are on the coast. So you're going to get that sort of influence of...
Can you get some saltiness?
Sea. Yeah.
Okay. So kind of like Jefferson's Ocean?
Yeah, sort of. but better.
Yeah.
We can tell he's a chemist with his our dump
his
bucket
beaker.
here. Yeah. All right. Well, what are we going to pour? Let's pour those. We'll come right back and talk and tell us the area again. We're going to
Islands.
Islands. Okay, here we go. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We have two that we're pouring that are from the islands. So, Glenn, tell us what we got in the glass here.
So we have Oban 14, and we have Talisker, and this one happens to be the Game of Thrones version, just because I prefer this one over the Talisker 10, but I mean both are good, but I tend to prefer this one.
Just reading
That's interesting.
Just reading the Oban
Yeah.
The back of the
label. They are a Diageo.
Yeah, this
That's
is considered
interesting.
one of the classic malts.
But Diageo is in conjunction with which distiller in the United States, which bourbon distiller? Was that? We'll have to do some research.
Talk to Google.
Yeah, because the Diageo,
That triggered something for you.
like, is that a wild turkey or?
That's Campari.
Okay.
So, say the name of the Game of Thrones one again.
Talisker.
And Talisker is a distiller
Yes.
and
So this one is not age stated.
not age stated.
So
but your
it's-
best guess would be this is
Probably 9 years,
Oh, it is that much. Okay.
somewhere in there. Yeah.
Okay. It's got some good color on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of
I
these proof wise are what?
So the Oban is 86 proof, and the Talisker is 91.6.
Oh, 91.6. That's the highest one we've had today.
So far, yeah.
Yeah. The Oban is, and I don't know if we're saying, is it Oban, Oban, Oban?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but Oban works
Same
for
here.
me. So, great on the nose.
Yeah. Oban. So Oban's kind of in the States, when you think of a craft distiller,
Oh, really?
they're a pretty small outfit.
You say small, but if they're distributed all the way over here, and I see them everywhere.
Yeah. They're
in
small
the
for
Scotch
Scotch
world. Okay.
distillers.
Okay.
But their stills are pretty small. Yeah, they produce way less than they could, but their focus is maintaining this flavor profile.
I mean, this nose is, I'm just blown away with the nose. I mean,
the Oban?
yeah,
it's one of my
Scotches
favorite.
in general.
This is one of my favorite scotches.
That is highly citrus. So I get some orange,
Yeah,
just a lot of citrus. Orange with some lemon.
What I like about it is it's very well balanced. Everything that you're getting, because it's complex, but none of it's like punching you in the nose that it just kind of takes over. There's, to me, just a lot going on this nose,
yeah.
which I like.
I got our yard guys next door.
And this has no peat on it?
No peat.
No.
Man, this nose
That
is
is
really
That's
nice.
very nice.
Yeah. So this is technically in Highlands, but it's on the coast, so it's basically islands.
Okay, gotcha.
All right.
You get any saltiness at all?
I do get the saltiness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, reminds me of, just sitting on the beach and it kind of comes off the ocean when you're sitting
Yeah.
there. It's just kind of nice. It's not,
Ocean mist.
Yeah, kind of like that ocean mist.
Yeah, this one, it's a little more pricey. This one's probably about 80, 90 bucks, I
yeah.
think. Maybe closer to 100 now.
And part of that's craft.
Yeah,
And part of
because they're
it's
small, but this also, it's a 14 year. Yeah.
So that was going to be my question. Is there any kind of measurement for, 12 years, what I've typically heard, get a 12-year Scotch, 12-year this, 12-year that, Glenfiddich 12, whatever, Glenmorangie 12. How much difference for a 14-year, 15-year, 20-year?
As far as price?
Yeah, I mean,
Or-
does it jump significantly? 'Cause
Seems like when you
it
get into the
does.
18s,
Yeah.
that's the big jump.
this isn't a fair comparison because it's more like that craft.
Right.
But if you went from the Glenmorangie 12 to a Glenmorangie 14,
So, like, yeah,
$45 to
probably 65, 70.
It is that much a jump.
Yeah, and then from the 15 to the 18, I think it's closer to 100.
So do you
75
find,
to
as somebody who enjoys Scotch, that it's worth the extra money for what you're getting in the bottle?
I don't think so. I think having, maybe one or two older bottles to maybe, a celebration whiskey or something like that.
Impress your friends.
Yeah, something like that. But
I'm thinking of the list of 5.
Right.
That's
yeah,
one of them.
right. I think having one or two like that. But in general, I like the younger, the 10, 12, 14-year scotches.
Yeah, I think to a point, like we were talking about, that law of diminishing returns.
Right.
I mean, how much better is it for what you're paying for it?
I'd like to give them a try and
As long
see.
as it's somebody else's
That's right.
bottle.
I'm not going to go out and buy them, but
Right.
So-
So the Bunnahabhain, so one of the Islas that we're going to get into is Bunnahabhain 12. The 18, it's really good, but it's not worth, to me, I would much rather have the 12.
So what's the Bunnahabhain 18 in the 300 range?
No, it's, I think 120, 140,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
Still
But versus $50,
right.
Right.
For the
I
12.
don't-
2 of those and be done.
yeah, I way more
I'll
enjoy
tell you what I'm going to do is Daryl had offered me a pour a couple months ago when I was at his house of the Balvenie 30 year.
Okay.
And I said, no, thank you.
And that's
I mean,
$1,200.
$1,200 a bottle. And I said, no, thank you, man. I said, I know nothing about
Right.
Scotch. But after this episode, next time we're at Daryl's house,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask for some.
Yeah.
See how good that $1,200 bottle is.
Right. I can't imagine that the difference is that significant. I'm sure it's fantastic.
I'm sure it tastes great.
But over the 21 year.
Correct. Or over the 12 year.
Yeah, or the 25. I mean, each increment, you're not getting that much better.
Right.
That's my whole thing.
Because that was almost what I brought today was the Balvenie 14 in the wood
The
finish series.
Caribbean,
Caribbean
yeah,
cask.
That one's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yep. And that one's still on. I mean, that one's
60,
$70.
yeah.
$67, $70, something.
I'm going to try this Oban.
Yeah. Have you tasted it?
The
The Oban?
that was our first one, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
What'd you think?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Man, this is good.
Like I said, on the nose is very citrusy.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of surprising myself that I've really enjoyed these scotches. I really enjoy these. I could do a night now where there's a bottle share.
Yep.
And it's just scotch and it doesn't have to be bourbon anymore.
When we talked about doing this podcast for scotches, I was like, oh God, here we go. And now,
I'm like, this is good.
yeah, I need to stay out of the liquor stores.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because it's like, ooh, that one. Oh, that
But that's
one.
what you have to know where you're going with Scotch.
Right.
Just like, what your introduction was.
Yep.
You get one bottle, like, you can easily go wrong
Yeah.
and get something that's not.
So based on this Oban, I'm going to guess it should be the clear winner out of these two from the islands. Because the other one's non-age stated. This is a 14-year. It's a craft. It's got a little bit more love and, whatever into the bottle. So it should be the clear winner. Would you set us up that way just for as far as expectations?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
The Talisker, maybe we should have had them backwards. But,
Yeah, I was wondering that now.
The Talisker, though, to me, it evolves so much. With whatever you're doing, it just changes like throughout your experience of drinking it.
I just started nosing the Talisker, and to me, it smells like barbecued meat.
Really?
Yep.
I haven't got
Smells
into
like
it.
barbecued brisket.
Which is not a bad thing.
Nope.
It's a very good thing.
Which is our dinner for tonight.
We're here in Texas, so absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's more earthy. For me, I think it's more earthy smell than maybe meaty. But
Since you just let everybody know that we're having brisket, what's your favorite brisket?
What do you mean?
like where to get it? Or,
Yeah.
Or brand?
or
Or
you've had
And
it.
just where to get it, what to eat.
I typically buy mine HEB Prime, but now that beef prices and brisket prices
skyrocketed.
have gone to $5 a pound for brisket, which is
Ridiculous.
a terrible cut of meat. I'm switching over to something else to
Whole
barbecue for a while. I mean, you can still get a 10-pound
pork butt
for less than $10. Less than $10.
Yeah.
So yeah.
My favorite brisket is one Glenn cooks.
Well,
Somebody else.
Yeah, free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do anything because
That's right.
He
He put in all the work, all the time.
You get to enjoy it.
That's right.
Because he does it old school. He's not one of those Traegers or Pit Boss or Rectex that you just throw it on and it's the barbecue crutch. I'm giving those guys a hard time. I know there's a place for those, but I'm old school. I like to go out and
Barbecue oven.
Yeah.
Easy bake oven.
Yeah.
Depends on if you want to stay up all night and stoke your.
Did you have to stay up all night? How does that hold the heat?
Oh, it was great.
So you can get it to, what did you cook it at, 225, 240, somewhere in that range?
250.
250?
Yeah, and it stayed there for basically 12 hours.
So you could just go to sleep and leave it there.
I
You stayed up kind of stoking it, watching it?
But I started it yesterday morning at probably 9, and then, finished it up probably, I think, 7:38.
So once you get your bark where you want it on your brisket, do you mop or do you not mop?
No, I don't mop.
Never mop.
I spray.
I spritz.
That's what I do.
And
so I call that mopping, putting any kind of liquid on top.
Right. So I use half apple cider vinegar, half beer.
Okay, you do those two, and then I throw in a little orange juice too.
Yeah.
So on my brisket, I mop.
I didn't want sugars. I don't want sugars in it.
Because it's going to brown up and.
Well, it can burn potentially.
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
So on my beef, I use a mixture of beef consomme or beef broth with some Worcestershire sauce in it, and that's what I spritz on my beef.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm doing pork,
But you wait till you get a nice bark on it.
Yeah, you have to have the
You
bark
have
first.
to wait until you get that bark.
yeah.
Yeah. So like the water evaporates the lowest, the alcohol. So the reason I do mine, so alcohol evaporates first, then water stays behind, then the water evaporates, and then the acetic acid and the
Vinegar. Yeah.
So it's not all just gone
I
at
do
the same
beer and
time.
vinegar too. I like that. I just use a spray bottle.
And that's what I use on pork.
Okay.
The apple cider vinegar
Yep.
with some apple juice or orange juice, something.
Okay.
Yep.
This one is way different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way different.
Yeah. It's night and day.
So this one it's not horrible, but when I
This has more
initially
peat.
put it to the nose, that's what I'm
This
getting.
has more peat influence.
Okay. And I'm going, not my thing.
Yeah.
That's my first reaction.
This would be a minefield for me to step on. This would be a mine in the minefield for me to step on with regard to Scotch.
So do you find people who get into Scotch who've made the journey and are now into it, is this the normal process that you go through the non-peat before you get to peat? You find people that just love peat right now?
There are some people that go straight to the extreme of Isla's, like Ardbegs.
Lafroig.
Lafroig and
So I've heard there's a new Ardbeg that came out that everybody's looking for called
Scorch.
Scorch. Yeah.
What is it?
Scorch.
It's like $130 a bottle.
Yeah.
And they're peated.
Oh, Ardbeg's heavily peated.
Heavily peated. Okay.
Really?
I will stay away. That
So
will be $130
we'll give you-
bucks that they won't get of mine.
Yeah. So I have one. It's called Black.
I saw when it came out and everybody was raving about it.
So it's finished, I think, for 6 years in New Zealand. I think it's Zinfandel casks.
Oh, really?
So I know you guys don't like peat, but
Yet.
But But the way that wine works with the peat, it's a completely different experience than most. So
Settles it out a little bit. It
Yeah.
just kind of.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's different.
that does not fit my palate right now for Scotch.
I'm getting the Band-Aid big time.
Definitely
The Band-Aid
Rubbery,
right here is showing up
burning
like,
rubber Band-Aid.
remember when you get the Band-Aid wet and you can smell it? Mm-hmm. I'm getting that on the palate. Just Band-Aid.
Agree completely.
Which is normal, you said.
For some islands, yes, that's normal. I get so I'm used to this more.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't get that as much. So it's kind of, I don't know.
I mean, I get what you're saying because, again, going back to bourbon, if you're getting into bourbon, people say if you're not used to drinking something neat,
Yeah.
all you get first is alcohol.
Right.
And until your palate gets used to that, you can't pick up the other flavors in that profile. So I get that because I'm not used to this. It's the peat is what's punching me in the face, and
That's
I'm
what you're
missing
getting
everything
first.
else.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you acclimate to the peat, then you can get the stuff behind the
Okay.
peat.
But right now,
But
I'm
it's-
just getting
if that's all you're getting, then-
Band-Aid,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Just wet Band-Aid.
Yep.
Which, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't.
This is part of this whole thing.
Right.
It's a learning
Learning
experience.
Yep.
And so, now you maybe know
Band-Aid.
you don't like some of the islands.
Right.
Right. So, okay, maybe I need to stay more highlands or space side for now. And then maybe dabble in later on, or just get a pour from somebody or somewhere.
And I'll tell you that this isn't like disgusting. I mean, it's not where I'm like, oh,
No,
gee,
it's just-
I want to
it's-
spit that out and rinse my mouth. No, it's just
it's just
it's
not
a
enjoyable.
profile. Yeah, it's
Right.
a profile that I go,
Nope. Not for
yeah.
me.
I mean, I can swallow it, but it's not something I want to.
That's
continue
what she
to,
said.
Right.
Yeah. Dave went there before me. That's a new one. The crowd's happy for you, Dave. Yeah, this
guys
is definitely peated.
Yeah.
I mean, heavy.
I don't remember it being super peaty. It's been a while since I tasted it.
Is it peaty to you? Because it's
Yeah, it's a little more than Highland Park, but it's not.
way more than Highland Park to me.
Yeah.
That we had the 12 year you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, this is way more peated than that.
Yeah.
You agree?
Oh, I would agree. But now I think I would like to try something that's described as heavily peated.
Yeah,
And
that's coming up.
to see
How much more peat you can get in there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if that's not heavily peated, then
It's not awful. I continue to sip it. It's not awful, but I can see. Is it fair to say this is an acquired taste, or again,
Yeah.
Most people don't drink this and like it. Most people, I know there's that exception, but most people have to kind of ease their way into the peated stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so, and especially
It's just Band-Aid.
people that aren't used to like barbecue or something like stuff like that, like really smoky things.
yep. Because on the nose, that reminded me of
Yeah, you said brisket.
smoking a brisket, lifting the lid on your pit,
Hitting you.
and the smoke that comes.
waft.
Yes.
This Oban 14 is
That's
amazing.
That
Phenomenal.
was outstanding.
Yeah, the 18 is great, but for the price point, I love
Stick
this
with
14.
14.
Yeah, they also have.
And what did we say the 14 was? Around 100?
It's
$70.
I think it's 80 to 90 somewhere in
80 to
there.
90, okay.
So it's a little high from what I've tried to do with what we're tasting today is sort of more entry level, but a couple of these.
So this is to your point that you made earlier. These are both islands.
Yeah,
And
basically
one
islands,
is
yeah.
peated and
Yeah.
one is not. So
Right. So you can't just go, I like
Perfect.
this region,
Yeah.
and
Because
just go by that.
that Oban
because
is
because
great.
being completely noob and amateur to Scotch, if somebody would have said, "Oh, you need to stick with Isla Scotches," and you go in and you pick one, and you might be walking out with something that's heavily peated,
and you don't know it.
and you don't know it, and you're
Right.
thinking, "Okay, I'm getting something that's not."
Yeah, if I
peated."
bought this over this,
right,
I'm done for
Yeah,
that area.
absolutely.
Where this Oban is, my gosh, that's good.
Yeah, it's delicious.
I will probably get a bottle of that.
Yeah, I don't think you can. For the money, that's my go-to.
Man, that is delicious. How many regions have we gotten through so far? Is that 4?
Three, I think.
Yeah, 3.
Where are we going next? We've done Speyside.
Yep, Space
Highlands?
Highlands,
An island.
So we got
Isla,
We've got Isla.
and lowlands.
and so we don't have any lowlands.
That's fine because I think
That's
we've
right.
done drink enough. But talk
Yeah.
about lowlands real quick. What would people?
So
I mean, is it similar to Highlands? I mean, to me, you think Highland, lowland. I think opposite. So I think it's going to be different. But
Yeah.
we've already established that.
So lowland is more. So I think it's closer, like the name sounds. Yeah, lower elevation. So I think
Yeah.
it's
Right.
closer to the coast. The only one, honestly, that I have experience with is Auchentoshan 12, and it's a really good, really good dram. I just really enjoy that one.
Say that name again.
Auchentoshan.
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 Yeah, that's going to be a challenge.
Auchentoshan.
These pronunciations for these
Yep.
scotches.
Yeah, but it's I think similar to some Space Sides and some Highlands. You get some really nice like sort of cereal notes. Like
What kind of cereal? More like your weeded
Captain
kind of,
Crunch.
Yeah.
Crunch berries.
Actually,
Fruity Pebbles.
Captain Crunch is probably close as far as the taste goes.
Berry, no berry.
No berry. Just the the things that tear up the top
Yeah.
of your mouth.
Shred your palate.
Yeah, they do. So the next one we're going to try then will be Isla.
So we're hopping into Isla.
Okay, well, let's do that.
Let's do it.
What are we going to pour?
We're probably going to start with Bunnahabhain, and then we might work our way into some of the peated stuff.
Is that a French brandy cask?
We have one French brandy cask.
Okay.
So we'll try those side by side, as those are probably the two most approachable Islas for you guys. And then we'll work into
Well, let's pour those and see what they are. Okay, so now we have some Isla whiskeys, Glenn,
Yep.
and these are Bunnahabhain.
Yeah, Bunnahabhain. Really long and hard to spell name.
Yeah, not a. I wouldn't think this is a. Well, maybe it is. I
You're screwed if you got this in a spelling bee.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, but
country of origin, Scotland.
difficult to,
Yeah, good
difficult
luck.
to spell.
So what you have for us here is we've got two from the same producer,
Yep.
but one is their standard release,
Yeah, so we have Bunnahabhain 12,
and one is finished in a brandy.
a French brandy cask, and this is a limited release. So sorry for you guys that.
I wonder why if it's a French brandy. I guess it's not from the region of Cognac. So it's made outside the region of Cognac. Because you think French,
Yeah.
you think brandy,
Right.
you think Cognac.
Cognac.
So it must not be made in Cognac. Okay. Should have a similar profile, though. I'm thinking
Yeah, so
Cognac.
this is a 11-year-old and then finished in brandy butts, and it's so both are not colored and not chill filtered,
Okay.
but the French brandy cask finish is 52.5% alcohol versus 46.3.
Okay, here's my question. What was the last one we had from the islands that was peated? It started with a T.
Talisker.
Should this be more peated than that? 'Cause it doesn't seem that way
So-
to me on the nose.
And that's the whole thing that we're we're trying to fight here is just because it's from a region doesn't mean it's peated or not peated or heavily peated.
And I'm not
And-
going by
and-
region. I'm
right.
just saying because if you say to me this is more peated, to me, whatever they've done to it, it doesn't seem that way
No,
to me.
this is the probably lowest peated Isla there is.
Yeah.
And I
Okay,
would
okay.
say this is non-peated.
Okay.
They
okay.
have peated releases. But,
Okay. And the only way I could kind of say what I'm thinking is sometimes when you drink a bourbon and you go, okay, this is like 100 proof, and somebody goes, that's 132.6, and you go, what? It doesn't drink like that.
Right.
To me, if you told me this was peated, I'd go, what? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem peated. So that's the way I'm thinking about this. I didn't know if this region was typically peated or not.
This region is heavily peated.
It's heavily peated. This one
Generally.
doesn't seem that way, and you
Yes.
said it's not.
It's not. This particular line is not.
Okay. Because I didn't get that on the nose at all. I was like, okay, this isn't
No,
seem.
this is probably going to be closer to the Oban that we had.
Okay.
As far as flavors from it, the sort of maritime kind of sea air, some of the fruits.
I love the nose on it.
Yeah.
I mean, and what does this run retail?
This is about $52.
Okay, still not bad. We're still in that $40 to $60 range.
Yeah.
Other than the Oban.
Right.
This on the nose is very nice.
Yeah. It's not as complex as like Oban,
I agree.
but I still love this.
To me, it's just more fruit than anything else.
Yeah. What do you think of it, Dave?
I like it. And I've already nosed it and tasted it. And
That's what she said.
And it's interesting, just jumping up proof point, 6 to 8 proof point.
This is probably one of the first ones that we've had that's not chill filtered.
Okay.
So that changes a lot.
There is a definite difference in mouthfeel, finish.
As far as mouthfeel, you're exactly right. I just took a drink.
Yep.
This to me drinks more like a bourbon
Yes.
profile.
Little hotter on
On the palate,
palate.
and a nice finish. This
Yes.
is a really nice finish.
Yes, nice finish.
Well, I'm a fan of this.
Same.
It's not sweet. It's not like
No.
Not at all.
some of the other ones, the Highlands or the Space.
On the
Side
nose,
that we had.
it's sweeter than it is on the palate.
Yes, yeah, but on the palate, it's not. It's dryish.
Yeah.
There's still some fruit,
But I'm going to
it's
say,
not-
to me, I don't mean to interrupt you. I
Yeah.
apologize. Once I've had it on the palate and then I nose it again, now I'm picking up more on the palate. I mean, on the nose, what I got on my palate.
Yep.
Is that typical?
yeah,
Yeah, now the fruit's not punching me like it was. I'm
Yeah.
getting a similar profile to what I was getting on the palate when I drank it.
yeah.
That's interesting. I love how Barley snores a little bit.
Yeah, it snores a lot.
Barley, she's dreaming now.
Barley's having a few
under the
dreams.
table.
I'm assuming barley is malted
Yes,
barley.
probably.
Barley is Glenn's dog. We are recording at Glenn's house because he cooked a brisket today.
Yep. And Barley is the mascot for this podcast.
That is delicious. I mean, I really like that.
Yeah. This is a little peek into Isla
Okay.
as far as some of the flavors you can get. The problem you guys are going to have is most of them are peated,
Yep.
right? So we'll look into some of these that are peated in just a little bit. But
The next one is that brandy.
yeah,
Yeah.
How about that?
You definitely get the cognac
The
or
grapey.
the Armagnac
yeah.
flavors that,
Big time. I
Yes.
mean, right.
yep. Definitely the grapey.
But I still get the same the saltiness
Oh, yeah.
and some of those like stewed fruits.
But my mind tells me this is going to be delicious on the palate. I'm a cognac Armagnac fan. I'm not a huge drinker of it, but the
Right.
ones I've had, I've really enjoyed. Trying to get more into that too. I may have a drinking problem, Dave. All the different things I'm trying to get into.
Drinking problem,
See,
buying,
yeah.
buying problem. Yeah, all of that.
Is it bad that I get on Facebook and look for people who have a lot of bottles and then try to friend them? Is that a bad way to do it? Nobody replies to me.
No.
This I like. This brandy one on the nose is nice. How you like it on the palate, Dave?
It's very good. It's definitely got more sweetness to it on the front end.
It's more complex, like way more complex, and it's longer. Like the finish is longer for me.
Yep. But this one is 105 proof
Yep.
and
Is that much proof?
and did not drink as hot as
Not even close.
the first one that was 92.6.
This has some peat on it, though.
No,
On the finish, I get a little more.
it doesn't say. So it might. I'm not saying it.
Because I'm
doesn't,
getting peat
but
on that finish too, Dave. That's exactly why I was saying that.
Yeah, but not like the
Not heavily.
the
but not like
Talisker that we
Talisker,
had.
Yeah.
But it definitely came through with some smoky notes.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is a 13-year. So it's 11 years in like their standard cask,
Right.
and then 2 years in the French
brandy.
brandy.
Dead air. Good radio.
That's right. You'll edit that out.
Yes, I will. So, if I'm going to be honest, I think I like the standard better.
The Bunnahabhain 12, I would agree with you.
Do you have a preference here, Glenn?
I think for complexity, I like the French brandy,
Okay.
but the Bunnahabhain 12 it's my
delicious.
favorite.
Yeah, the French brandy has some stuff that is definitely very nice, but
I love barley.
yeah, snoring away. But the standard release 12 is
Delicious.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one.
She needs a CPAP.
I mean, it's good. I like the French brandy finish, but I prefer the standard 12.
Yeah, I just randomly saw this one at Specs when not long after it came out down at Smith Street, and it just sounded really interesting.
Yeah.
And
Called to you, said buy me.
What'd you pay for that one?
basically, I think it was just over $100.
Oh, was that much?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bunnahabhains tend to.
Once you get over the 12,
Yep.
and so the 18, it's expensive. It's like 140, 150. I
Oh,
think.
wow.
But I don't enjoy it as much as the 12. And so
Every person I've told that, hey, man, I'm trying to get into Scotch, all they say is, get your wallet out.
Yeah.
you don't no.
Which I don't think it's that much different than bourbon, to be honest with you.
With obviously there's way more. Oh, there's budget Scotch, like super budget Scotch, but I don't recommend it at all. Same with there's some pretty budget bourbon that's good. That's really good. So I think bourbon you can get in to some decent stuff way cheaper than you can Scotch.
Yeah,
so like 20 to 30.
25. Yeah.
I mean, because anything over $100 with bourbon, there don't seem to be that many of them out there. But with Scotch,
No, there's
because of the different age statements, when you get 15, 18 into the 20-plus year aging,
and then if
you're into the 300, anywhere from mid-150s to into the 300s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you get into some of the single barrel like cask strength stuff, you can get up there. But that's some of the most enjoyable. Like I've had a couple that are phenomenal. That you can't the standard release you just don't get those flavors. Well, we're really enjoying what we have, what we've had so far.
Well, you've steered us in a direction.
Jumping,
Yeah, go ahead.
but jumping up in proof to something more cask strength, just with bourbon, you get so many more flavors out of that.
Totally agree.
Right.
And if you're a regular bourbon drinker, the proof doesn't beat you up. Your palate's used to it.
Right.
Because, I'm sure all of us sitting here, if I drink something 115 to 125, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm sure our standards, we start at 90.
Yeah.
Right. Most of these scotches aren't at 90.
No.
And usually I'm at 100 to
I was going to say, when we do a warm-up, it's usually a bottled in bond of something or 100 proof or around 100 proof.
Right.
Yep.
So the palate is no problem, but I agree with you that, that's where you get the flavors in bourbon when you get in, because, again, it's not been watered down, right?
Correct.
yeah.
But our palates are used to it. But Scotch there's a lot of flavors in these. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard people say that forever, and again, it's the process, it's the weather, it's the whatever, but I'm just blown away. Do they water down?
Yeah.
I mean, so what does this come out at? If it's 12-year-old,
Their entry proof is lower than our entry proof.
figured that.
Right
I'm
into
figuring
the
it's
barrels.
right above 100.
It's probably 100, 110.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's more 110 to maybe to 120, but I don't think they go in at like 125 where we're capped here in the U.S. for bourbon. But yeah, I think when they come out of the barrel, a lot of times it's max 120. Where we can get up to 130, 140.
I don't know. For me, so they're taking it from 120.
So they're adding less water. So I mean that's something to think about, right? So they're diluting it less to come down to bottling proof.
Are they?
Yeah, I think.
Because if it goes in at let's just say 110.
So up there, they're likely dropping proof.
It's not coming out hotter?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought it would still come out hotter. So they're not having any evaporation.
They are having evaporation, but they're evaporating ethanol versus water.
Really?
Because of the cooler temperatures.
Okay. That's interesting.
Is my understanding. So
yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but that's what I understand.
Because that seems like what I've read as well. That
makes sense when you think about the flavors.
That their entry proof is higher than when the barrel is done aging.
Yeah, the 12, this Bunnahabhain 12 is, gosh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of those on the nose are fantastic.
The brandy one on the nose, I'm going, okay, I like that. But on the palate and the finish,
it's good. But
prefer the Bunnahabhain 12.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not disappointed in buying that bottle.
Not at all. I mean, somebody like you is going to enjoy it a lot more than our younger Scotch palates.
Yeah, but it was still, I don't know. I just I adore this 12. It's so good.
There's a candy kind of note that I'm trying to think of what I'm getting on that.
On the 12?
No, on the French brandy one.
Oh, I finished mine.
There's a candy that I remember eating as a kid that it's bringing back memories, but I can't think of what it was. Unless one of you say it, I don't think I'm going to think of what it was.
I'm not getting
on the nose
the candy flavor. On the 12 or the finished?
On the French brandy finished. It's kind of almost like a caramel almost kind of. It's butterscotch. Is it butterscotch that I'm getting a little bit of?
No, what are they were little peanut butter
something
bars. God, what was that called?
You're not talking about Butterfingers.
No.
Okay.
I'm thinking more like marzipan.
Could be. Something that's triggering something for me. But.
Yep. It's good.
All right, what are we going to try next?
All right.
We're going to close the show out with some
we're going to
big badass peated stuff.
Punch your palates in there.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think we're going to try some Bruichladdich Port Charlotte. We'll try some Ardbeg. Black and the 10.
Okay.
So we'll just
the black should be interesting.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the black is finished in New Zealand wine casks. I think it's Zinfandel. We'll follow up with that whenever we join next.
All right, let's pour those and we'll be right back. All right, we are back for the last segment that we're doing for this episode.
So shocking awe of your
about
palates.
To punch us in the
Yep.
the sensory palate, whatever flavor, big old peat smoke, whatever. Wet Band-Aid is what I'm getting. All right, Glenn. All right. We have 4 pours in front of us. This is the most we've had this evening. So what do we got?
This is only like number what? 12, 13, 14, and 15?
Something like that.
The good news is we can hang with our alcohol.
That's right.
We're going to drink this. We'll probably drink some bourbon, then we'll go to some wine with the barbecue.
All right. So we got Bruichladdich Port Charlotte, heavily peated 10-year is what we're drinking first. Then we're moving on to a Duncan Taylor single barrel. It's a 12-year non-chill filtered cast strength.
From Brooklotic.
From Brooklotic. So this is the same distiller for the first two. So that's what I was trying to do. Keep the same two. That way you can sort of see the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. And we have Ardbeg 10, and then we have a Ardbeg Black, which is the 20th anniversary committee release, limited edition from Ardbeg. So
I'm nosing, Dave. You're just kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to do this or not.
I've nosed them
a little
twice
reluctant.
already.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you right now, on the nose, 2 and 3 are my favorites on the nose.
okay, yeah. So I think the two from the second Brooklotic is not heavily peated.
Doesn't seem like it
That's
is.
my favorite.
Right.
Yeah. On the nose.
Doesn't seem like
Two.
it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
The black from, how do you say it? Ardbeg?
Ardbeg.
Yes.
That is a Band-Aid that's been sitting in water for a couple days.
Right. Yep.
That is wet Band-Aid.
Yeah, sorry, I was wrong. This is Pinot Noir from New Zealand.
Boy, I'm not getting that.
No, not at all.
It comes through on the palate. It's not on the nose at all.
And I wish I could say that I was looking forward to that.
But I will say I've enjoyed this podcast, Glenn, and thank you
absolutely.
for doing it because, breaking out your scotches and going through them with us and kind of guiding us. And I'm definitely a fan now, and I kind of know what I need to look for to kind of get into it, and then we'll just see where things go.
Agreed. This has opened my eyes to the world of Scotch, and that there are some things out there that I like.
Yeah, I think you really need to find like a friend, like someone that that understands your palate.
Yep.
So I know what you guys like for wines, for bourbons, and having someone that knows that can probably better guide you than just someone that just drinks Scotch and like, oh, you should try this, right, and throw you into this Ardbeg 10, which you guys are going to both probably hate.
I don't hate it on the nose. Okay, so I want to go through for the listeners real quick. Tell us the name, because I'm looking at the back of this first bottle, which is, say this name again?
Brooklotic.
And it's 100 proof. I mean, it's
a 50% alcohol.
Yeah, so go through and tell us what we got here, because that's higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah, so the Port Charlotte is 50%. The Duncan Taylor Brooklotic is cast strength, so this is 53%.
106, okay.
Right, so then our Ardbeg 10 is 46%.
Okay.
So we're 92. And then Ardbeg Black is the same. It's 92%.
So do you find, or is it typical that peated scotches are higher proof than, because it's kind of been the rule today, and I don't know if that's just been the way it's worked out, or is that really typical?
I'm not sure the reasoning, honestly.
Okay.
But one thing that I do notice, so a younger Isla that's peated, people enjoy that more. Typically, if you love Isla, people go towards a younger. Once you get older, you lose a lot of the peat flavor, and it smooths that out.
I might like the older ones of those.
Yeah, right. But I think a lot of people that are fans of those prefer that punchy, younger, because as you age longer, you smooth out those rough, those rough edges, and I think with something like this that people really, well, some people enjoy that. That's what you're wanting, is that experience.
And it's kind of strange, but having tasted the first one,
I love this first one,
the Brooklotic, that is not something that I would go out and buy. It doesn't fit my palate, but when I drink it, I can see that how people would like it.
I'm with you.
Because
so once you get past the smoke and the peat,
and even then, there is a whole lot of complexity there that beyond the heat, like you said, beyond the heat and the smoke.
Yeah.
But bingo.
But it is not for me.
I'm with you completely, because to me, I'm going, I like this one. On the nose, not so much.
No, but there are
On the palate,
there are some characteristics there that are.
So it's a little. It's okay. So for me, it's a little smoky, but then once you get past that, it's vanilla and honey and just a nice smooth
I get fruit.
sweetness.
I get some sweetness. To me, I don't get on the other ones that I haven't liked, the heavily peated ones. It's because the wet Band-Aid just sticks nose, palate everywhere. I didn't think I'd like this one on the nose. And on the palate, I'm going, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, the wet Band-Aid's there. Sorry, I keep using that in my reference, but that's all I got.
It's the phenolics that you're picking up.
Yeah. It's there, but now I'm getting other stuff, and I'm going, okay, I kind of like that. It is complex.
So I think you're going to like number 2.
Really?
Yeah,
number 2 I like on the nose.
So
out of the 4.
Number 2 is not heavily peated. Same producer, yeah, but not a peated run.
I'm just absolutely shocked that on the nose, I'm going to hate this. I'm going to take a drink, but I'm going to hate it. And what did it say the name again?
Bruichladdich.
Bruichladdich.
Port Charlotte, heavily peated.
I didn't think I would like it on the nose. I'm going to hate this, but I'll take a drink. And when I took a drink, I went, oh, wait, hold on a second. I kind of like this one.
So where do you think Talisker is on this spectrum?
Wait, this is much better than that one.
No, as far as peated.
Yeah, this
The
one.
level. Yeah, so it's
Well,
way
less.
less.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In Highland Park,
Yeah.
it's
Well, Highland Park now would be like it doesn't have any peat in it
Right.
at all.
Right.
And that's what we were talking earlier.
so once you get used to this kind of stuff, going back
And a
to
friend of
that-
mine who's a big Scotch drinker said when you get into the peated scotches that it ruins your palate because once you get used to those, everything else tastes so
Bland?
But what you were struggling with Highland Park, I was able to get past that and like experience
Appreciate everything
the
else.
light fruity stuff that it offers. Where just struggling, it's the same with going up in proof
Right.
as far as just alcohol. You gotta get used to it.
right.
But once you get used to it, you can then look past it or get past that and then experience the other stuff.
This Duncan Taylor is nice on the nose.
It's actually pretty decent on the palate.
Is it?
Yeah. Now, if we would have started with this, I would have probably spit it out. but
Yeah.
but
that's really good on
but
the
working our way through it and having, like you said, the Talisker and
The Highland Park.
the Highland Park, it's
Oh, that's delicious.
just different levels.
How much is that bottle?
I think it was just under 100.
Well,
Once you get to the cast strength and like the single barrel kind of stuff, they start creeping up in price. But I wanted to experience the Port Charlotte at cast strength, and granted, it's not exactly Port Charlotte because it's not heavily peated. But I wanted to experience this distillery at cast strength.
This Port Charlotte, I thought on the palate, I go, okay, I'm intrigued. I like it. This Duncan Taylor, I really like.
I wouldn't say really like.
I
but
do. I really like it.
Yeah, it's got enough.
I don't get the Band-Aid
smoke.
on it.
Right. It's got enough smoke for me that it checks that mark, and then it's got the proof. It's got all the other stuff that I'm really looking for. It's complex. I love it. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with that one. All right, now we're going to go into the last two, which are
Ardbeg.
Ardbegs. Okay.
I always think.
And I know that anybody who watches Whiskey Tube on YouTube, the Whiskey Guys, they know that our boys over in the Whiskey Tribe or the Whiskey Vault, Dan and Rex,
Yep.
love Ardbeg. I mean, this caught my eye because I know it's one of their favorites, that producer. So I'm curious to see what we think about it. But you tell me it's heavily peated. I mean, I've been pleasantly surprised. It's funny to me that Talisker, I didn't like at all. But these that are heavily more peated than that, I don't know if it's just because
That's what I was saying previously is the way the peat comes across
Yeah.
changes vastly. Like
Boy, big difference.
it's so dramatic from distiller to distiller. Like just the way their process is, where they're sourcing the peat, all that plays into account. The overall flavor that comes through.
I really like that Duncan Taylor. I like that.
Yep.
And when I come visit you, Glenn, I'll drink more of that with you.
Sounds great.
All right, so now on to the Ardbeg.
How you feel about those, Dave?
I don't feel good about them.
You don't feel good about it?
No.
This isn't a lineup you've been happy with?
No.
You're ready for some wine and a big old Malbec with some brisket or something, a big petite Syrah?
Yep.
I love this tin though. But it's me. I love Isla and I love heavily peated stuff. I don't think it's as offensive on the palate.
Okay, I said before, all three still. I still get that Band-Aid on that first Ardbeg 10. But boy, you get it on that black. Holy cow! I'm a little nervous, Dave.
Yeah. So Ardbeg 10 is non-chill filtered. The notes are sea spray, tarry rope, which I have no idea what the hell that is.
Tarry rope.
And immensely smoky intensity.
I would agree with all of that, even though I don't know what the first two are. Salt spray was the first one?
Yep. I get brininess out of it.
Yeah, a little bit. Tarry rope. Yeah. Yeah, this.
So not for you at all.
Not for me.
Yeah.
Either one?
No.
You didn't like either one?
No.
Have you tasted the
I haven't
second
tasted
one?
I haven't tasted the final
The
one.
black?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you guys, like what you think the wine, because these are basically the same thing, but just wine aged. Like,
So one's just the black and the 10 are the same.
yeah,
Except one's finished in Pinot Noir.
right.
But the age on it, how long is it in Pinot Noir versus?
I want to say it was a few years.
Okay. We'll see what kind of influence it has on it.
I like that one better.
And I think it's actually like 6 years. Like, so I think it's a longer age.
I like the Ardbeg Black better than the 10-year.
See,
Mainly because there's a little more softness on the palate, a little sweeter.
I think it's, I think it softens it.
Yep.
how do you say this one again, Glenn?
Brooklotic?
Brooklotic.
Brooklotic. After drinking the first Ardbeg 10, I'm a bigger fan of the Brooklotic. That Ardbeg that just screams wet Band-Aid again. The first one. Let me try this black.
Yeah. I mean, Ardbeg. So
Which one do you like better out of these two? Or do you have are they just completely different? You appreciate both of them?
I love all of them.
Okay.
Like it's picking between
And I
the
get
kids
that.
kind of thing.
That's not hard to do.
Well, sometimes.
I already know which child Dave loves more.
But I really like the black.
Oh, the black is way better than that 10.
Yeah.
Okay. That I could drink.
Right. So do you see what the wine influence was?
Oh, huge.
Definitely. It
Huge.
definitely rounded out the sharpness, and I think a lot of the smoke it reduced it.
Yeah, that's way different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a softer mouth feel, a little sweeter.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you guys are drinking peat at 11. This is like level 11.
Well, that's not kicking my butt like I would think it would.
Right.
So
But
compared to
when you
a
were-
Lafroig,
It's comparable.
wow, okay.
But when you're talking about Band-Aids, I would not recommend you guys try Lafroig. Well, you can try it, but don't buy a bottle of it.
I don't get the Band-Aid on the black as much as I do on the 10.
Right.
The 10 just is all Band-Aid.
Yeah. So for me, I don't really get Band-Aid. I get Band-Aid on
Really?
like Lagavulin and Lafroig. I still like Lafroig a lot, but Ardbeg is where I gravitate towards, because it's more the peat is more of a sort of a barbecue-y smoke versus you can get like ashy and that same sort of phenolic Band-Aid-y flavor.
Well, I can tell you at my Specs or whatever my local liquor store is, they will be on the shelf for you to buy.
Yes. You're not going to take them.
No.
But I'm still happy.
No, absolutely.
Where we started with you, Dave, you were like, yeah, this isn't going to be good. But now at the end of this, you've got 3 or 4 that you like.
Yeah.
And like I said, these are the extreme.
Yep.
These are like complete extreme on the scale. They're not Octomore, which is like probably 3 times as peaty as this. So
It gets worse than this?
way worse.
I say worse.
And their bottles are cool. So
They are cool, but they're like $200-$300.
yeah.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Thank you, Glenn, for taking us through the world of Scotch. I mean, I think you sell yourself short on your knowledge of Scotch. I think you know a lot. You've exposed me, Dave. I'm not going to speak for you. You can speak for yourself, but you've exposed me to quite a few things that I'm looking forward to having in the bar and being able to pull out and have a little dram of once in a while.
Yeah, definitely.
I think several of these would be a very nice add to what I've currently got.
Yeah.
But also it exposed me to things that I won't be adding to,
that's
my bar.
100% what we were trying to do is, learning what you like, what you don't like, and then continuing into, that direction.
The journey.
Yeah.
Because like we said earlier, whether you think that bourbon is more singular note, which after tasting these, I can definitely see how
Scotch drinkers think
Scotch
that.
drinkers think bourbon is singular noted.
I think it's just a narrower
Way more-
range.
correct.
It's not,
No.
It's a 4-lane highway, different lanes, different speeds, but it's all kind of going the same direction.
right. Versus
Where Scotch is taking circles
There is
and overpasses.
there is a much narrower band with bourbon.
Sure.
yeah.
That the flavor profiles are similar. You're not going to stray greatly, but drinking through these, Scotch, has it's way
The
wide.
bandwidth is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just what they can do with the barrels, the different type of barrels, how many fills they've done.
Right.
Peat, not peat.
Yep.
Different grains from different regions changes vastly.
Yep. And I'm glad to have been able to try it out.
Yeah. So the lesson here is, if you're a bourbon drinker, or if you're not, but if you've considered exploring the world of Scotch, definitely do so. And if you're a bourbon drinker, you need to, because I think that's the world of spirits, right? Whether it's rum, whether it's Scotch, whether it's bourbon, whether it's
Armagnac, cognac.
Cognac. Yeah, I agree, Dave. Go explore all those things. I mean, that's what I love about wine. All the different regions and styles and varietals.
Yep.
And same with when you get into spirits, whether it's Scotch or bourbon or rums or tequilas or whatever it might be. Go explore those things. And
There is something in all of it that is for somebody.
Absolutely. And I've been a very reluctant person to get into Scotch or really give it a shot. But Glenn has helped me do that today, and I'm definitely a fan. And I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Or my wife said, never mind, 2 or 3 that I'll have in the bar now. So look forward to that.
Find a friend and definitely mooch.
That's right.
Try some.
Well,
like
Glenn,
they say.
we're friends, Glenn.
Yeah.
Like they say, go to a
Happy
bar,
to mooch or happy to.
Go to a bar and buy a pour before you buy the bottle.
Exactly.
Exactly right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining on this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.
Cheers, guys.